Now, all of this pales in significance to the next piece of news by Paul Joseph Watson at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. This is some of the most important news that I have covered in a long time. Now, I remember a couple months ago, the London Guardian and others reported that the UN had announced a new Green Army that will invade countries that, quote, are engaged in environmental crimes. Now, if you're a globalist-run system, which is most countries, you can have reactors blow up. They'll just say it's nutritional, splice all the different plants together, that sterilizes all the mammals it's tested on, GMO, it's great. Bisphenol A and all the major products, the soup cans, you name it, that's all part of the plan. They're saying they will invade your country. The UN just got done invading Ivory Coast a few months ago, and admittedly, the rebels killed tens of thousands and took over. And it's a UN takeover for the diamonds in that case. Now, the New York Times and others admit this is going on. This article, when you hear this is admitted, but they just basically whitewash it. Kind of like this LA Times article, 30,000 mostly black Libyans flee a single town. There are giant mass graves, and in some cases, giant dead piles of black people, black Libyans. The al-Qaeda forces that NATO's put in are publicly engaged in a massacre that will soon reach Rwandan proportions. We told you about this 6 months ago. It had begun. Now it's just pell-mell, kill any black you come across. And again, the liberals who'll have a heart attack if somebody doesn't hand over their bank account, they'll say, give us your bank account, give us government health care, give the foreign banks all your money or you're racist. And whites just slit their wrist and go, I'm guilty. Take everything I've got. Give it to Al Gore. Meanwhile, the UN all over the world is slaughtering, quote, minorities, which are the majority globally. And it's part of a racist eugenics program. And LA Times is just mass murder, total death. New York Times admits it. But don't worry, David Cameron has gone to the United Nations. And we're going to Paul here in a moment, into the next segment. He's gone to the United Nations and said, yes, let's invade more countries under humanitarian auspices. So they fund rebels, they rebel, the government fights back, the population fights back, NATO bombs the country for 5-6 months and invades and then slaughters any minority group and then calls it loving and liberal because a Peace Prize president's running it. After all, he's part black, so it must be good. Again, this is all political correctness, like a sick mental illness. Now, here's the latest news. They invade your country over environmental reasons. They invade your country over humanitarian reasons, having rebels try to overthrow it. Here's Paul Watson's headline, and it's all true. Armed troops burn down homes, kill children to evict Ugandans in name of global warming. And the mainstream news actually says, well, it's for the earth. Line up the families, shoot them, burn them, kill everybody. It's a program to come in and displace the people to, quote, plant trees as part of their carbon allotment. And Paul Watson joins us. We're going to break in a moment, Paul, but what's even more incredible than the UN-backed forces murdering people, Paul, is that the media is like, well, it's okay. This is loving. This is a sacrament of death, Paul.
Well, I mean, just look at the headline that the New York Times puts on top of this astounding story. In scramble for land, group says, company pushed Ugandans out. Just gently pushed them out. And then you actually read what the villagers reported was done. Burning down homes, killing children, beating people up, threatening to shoot them in the head if they resist. You know, just gently pushing them out. And of course, this is all being run under the order of the World Bank and other banks like HSBC, transnational corporations. It's called the New Forests Company, and it's basically working with the brutal Ugandan government. They've evicted more than 20,000 Africans and also people in South America from their land. Basically, little warning, no compensation, armed troops turn up, set everybody's houses on fire, beat and kill anyone who resists. There's a report of children being killed in this New York Times article.
But that's a gentle push. That's a nudge, Paul.
Just a gentle push,
And we wonder why we have 30 million illegal aliens here. This was done in the 80s and 90s all over southern and central Mexico. On record, they came and took land that people have been on for thousands of years under a UN program. They even had rebellions in Yucatan over it. We'll be right back. How incredible this is. How off the charts. Cameron and the UN, the Prime Minister of England and the UN, are openly in the news yesterday saying we're going to have more humanitarian interventions like Libya, Ivory Coast, and others. They're talking about Syria. And it's on record the West is funding rebels in all these countries to try to overthrow them. They're going into Libya, and now it's been admitted for weeks, what we told you 6 months ago. They are murdering blacks on sight who live in North Africa, who are part of the country. They are killing them. I saw a report where they shot toddlers and killed them yesterday in the Associated Press because their last names were Gaddafi. It's basically like Jones or Smith in Libya. Very common name. And they just killed him. I mean, this is they got him at the airport, caught him at the airport. They just lined him up and shot him. That was in the news yesterday, and it's like, oh, this is so humanitarian. And now I'm reading the New York Times and others, and they're like, well, yeah, this World Bank-run company, and they just say when they come into an area, oh, we're doing this to plant trees. It's for a forest. And basically, we've seen this over and over again with the UN, Agenda 21, UN biosphere zones. They go and enforce the indigenous populations out. This is incredible. Paul Watson, please continue with your report. Hold on, we're going to get you. You need to start over. I'm sorry, you weren't faded up. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is the New Forests Company, which is a British company. Its primary investor is the World Bank. It's run by the current HSBC managing director, and also on its board of directors are several investment bankers, including one who worked for Goldman Sachs. Basically, they make money out of seizing the land of poor villages in Africa primarily, planting trees and then selling the carbon offsets to transnational corporations who can then, quote, pollute. And, of course, the cost is merely passed on to us, the consumer. And then afterwards, they just chop down the trees and sell them for timber anyway. So you've got this group, which is basically run by the World Bank. It's a World Bank front working in alliance with the Ugandan government and the army. They show up at villages, threaten people to get out of their homes. If they don't, they kill them. They set the homes on fire. And then for example, in this one village, which is mentioned in the New York Times article, the school where the kids were taught, which of course is very important in Africa where education's so lacking, the school is now the headquarters for this British sustainability company. So they ransack entire villages and towns. Farmers have the whole plantations destroyed. There's one case in a Guardian article, which is about the same issue, where the guy talks about, you know, he was growing bananas, he was growing sugar canes, he was feeding his children. Now he's, you know, the poorest guy there. And the malaria, malnutrition, all exploding as a result of this. And it's neo-colonialism under the guise of protecting against global warming. This is killing the African dream of development and a reasonable standard of living through global warming hysteria, which is all run by transnational banks and corporations who invoke this climate change con to raise villages and steal land so they can take a slice of this multi-billion-dollar carbon trading Ponzi scheme.
And Paul, as the 1948 British Royal Commission admitted, that was adopted by the U.S. government as policy, on record, we cover it in Endgame, they said, if we let the third world industrialize, they'll stop having as many kids, but we're going to block them from industrializing. They're going to have a bunch of kids, but then we'll just mitigate with birth control and land use and use food as a weapon, as Kissinger repeated in '73, the State Department Memorandum 200. And so this is so cold-blooded, just like the carbon taxes in Copenhagen we learned. We're right at double what they would be on the third world, what they would be on the West. This is a death sentence by a bunch of eugenicists, but as long as they say they're liberal, it's okay. And trendies all over Austin have carbon offset stickers on their cars and pay money to these very groups so they can run around mass murdering black people. They love it, too. I mean, you tell a liberal, they're like, good, murder them all. There's too many. I'm liberal. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, progressives who hyperventilate about, you know, global warming impacting poor people the most and how we need to reduce our living standards, when global warming alarmism itself is not just reducing the living standards of the poor, it's starving them to death. I mean, look at biofuels. You've got countries like Swaziland and Haiti where they're living on mud pies. You know, food prices double because all these transnational corporations are seizing the land.
Stay there. We're going to Aaron. We're going to get him online now, but I want you to finish when we come back. This is part of a larger program, and I want to tie it in, as you were just doing, with the Copenhagen Treaty, with the biofuels, admittedly killing millions more every year via starvation. And you bring this up to a liberal trendy, they'll just go, I'm not a liberal trendy, okay? I mean, they're really Nazis, and they love it. It's so much fun for them. We'll be right back.